Have you ever felt a fire burning deep within but had no idea how to ignite it? You think you've mapped the limits of your strength, but what if everything you believe is just the surface? And what if, buried beneath the doubts and fears, lies a power within you that could change everything? Listen closely. Because within you is a power that never truly dies. It may flicker, it may dim, but it's still there, waiting. And then, one day, there's a moment, a thought, a challenge. And suddenly, that moment becomes the spark. It adds fuel to the flame you forgot you had. You may already believe you understand your limits, that you've explored every edge of your potential. But let me tell you the truth, what you believe is only the surface. Beneath that surface lies a vast, untapped ocean of force, talent, and strength you haven't even begun to access. There's something inside you that doesn't break. Not really. It may go quiet. It may feel far away. But it never disappears. That same part of you that kept going when everything fell apart. It's still here. It hasn't abandoned you. And whether you realize it or not, you've barely scratched the surface of what you're capable of. Most people live their entire lives trapped beneath a limited version of themselves, one shaped by fear, failure, and false assumptions. They carry the weight of boundaries handed down by others, and they accept them as truth. But what if those limits were never real? What if every doubt, every fear, every setback, wasn't proof of who you are, but simply a test? A whisper from within, calling you to dig deeper, to rise, to wake up to the truth you've forgotten. You are more powerful than you know. We've just lit the first spark of that inner fire, but what comes next will take you even deeper, into the heart of what's truly holding you back, that fire we spoke of. It's not something you have to go out and find. It's already inside you, just waiting to be awakened. But what if the challenges you face were never meant to break you? What if they were simply there to wake you up to who you already are? You think you've seen what you're made of? You haven't. Because beneath the noise, the overthinking, the self-doubt, the endless underestimating, there's another version of you. A version most people never meet. A version that isn't loud or desperate for validation. It's calm, focused, unshaken. That version of you is quietly powerful. Not flashy. Not dramatic. But deeply grounded. Real. It's the kind of power the Stoics wrote about, the kind Marcus Aurelius lived by when he said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." And that's exactly where we're going today. Not to some surface-level motivation. Not to empty hype. We're going deeper. To the real stuff. The strength that's already there, the strength that has never left you. And if any part of you, even the smallest part, feels like it's time to stop doubting and start becoming, then don't go anywhere. This video might be the moment you've needed. The spark that lights everything up again. The gentle nudge that reminds you who you've always been. One small favor before we dive in. If this resonates, if this is the kind of space where you want to grow, reflect, and rebuild, hit that subscribe button. It truly helps more than you know. Now, let's get into it. Let me ask you something personal. Why do you think you doubt yourself? Really think about it. Because it's not because you're weak. It's not because you're broken. It's not because you don't have what it takes. The truth? You doubt yourself because somewhere along the way, you lost sight of how much you've already survived. You forgot how much you've already conquered quietly. Doubt doesn't come from weakness. It comes from disconnection. From losing touch with the part of you that has been showing up, day after day, without applause, without permission, without validation. That part of you that got up when the weight was unbearable. That kept moving when your mind was screaming for you to stop. That smiled at others while silently holding pain no one could see. Most people never acknowledge that strength. They dismiss it. They overlook it. But you've lived it. And that's where your true power is hiding, in the silent victories. In the moments no one clapped for. In the parts of your story you've never told. In the next part, we'll reconnect with that version of you, the one who's been quietly carrying it all, and is finally ready to stand tall. Let's keep going. Because if you've ever wondered why you doubt yourself, why that quiet strength feels so distant sometimes, it's not because it isn't there. It's because you were trained not to look for it. Not because it's missing, but because you've been taught to ignore it. You weren't born unsure of yourself. That hesitation you feel, the self-doubt, the fear of speaking up or standing out. You learned that. It came gradually. Like a second language. Soft at first, almost invisible, woven into the way people told you to tone it down. To play it safe. To not get your hopes up. Maybe it started at school, where being different meant getting judged. Maybe it was at home, where love was conditional. Maybe it was watching someone else step forward, and get punished for it. However it started, it wasn't your fault. But now? Now it's your responsibility. Your responsibility to unlearn it. To unlearn the fear of your own light. To unlearn the habit of shrinking so others feel more comfortable. Because as Aristotle once said, we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit. So let me ask you. What have you been repeatedly doing? Dismissing yourself? Second-guessing every instinct? Downplaying your gifts? Apologizing for who you are? You're not alone in that. But here's the thing most people miss, beneath the noise of doubt, the looping self-criticism, the constant mental clutter, there's another voice. A quieter voice. One that doesn't shout. It doesn't demand attention. But when everything else goes quiet, when the distractions fade, it whispers. It whispers, this isn't all I am. I was made for more than this. Have you ever sat alone in silence and felt it rising? Not from ego. Not from arrogance. But from truth. The kind of truth that doesn't ask for permission. It just is. That voice has survived everything you've thrown at it. Every time you tried to quiet it down. Every time the world told you to stay small. It kept breathing. It kept waiting. And the fact that it's still there? Still whispering? That's not an accident. That's your signal. So what would happen if, for once, you actually listened to it? That voice we just talked about, the one buried beneath the noise of doubt and fear? If fear and overthinking have survived all this time, so has the strength that carried you through. You've endured more than you give yourself credit for. There were moments when quitting would have been easier. Times when silence felt safer than speaking. Nights when you carried a storm inside, heavy, loud, unrelenting, yet still got up the next morning, smiled, and acted like the sky was clear. That's not weakness. That's not denial. That's grit. That's resilience that doesn't wear medals. That's proof of something unshakable in you that refuses to quit, even when no one is watching. Carl Jung once said, "I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become." And the truth is, you've been choosing, even in silence. You've been shaping yourself with every quiet decision to keep going. Every time you stood back up. Every time you moved forward without applause. That is where your real identity is forged. The problem isn't that you're not strong. It's that you've forgotten your own proof. You've forgotten the strength buried in those ordinary, uncelebrated days. The days when you showed up anyway. The mornings when everything felt wrong, but you still made it through. The seasons when healing happened piece by piece, with no finish line in sight. And yet, you kept going. That kind of strength doesn't just vanish. It doesn't die. It simply gets ignored. Why? Because we live in a world that teaches us to trust criticism more than capability. We dismiss compliments. We downplay achievements. We write off survival as luck, instead of recognizing it as willpower. And slowly, a quiet story begins to form in our minds. I'm not enough. Even when all the facts say otherwise. Socrates once said, "The unexamined life is not worth living." But I'll take it further. The unexamined self is where most suffering begins. Because if you never stop to reflect on everything you've overcome, if you never pause to notice the silent battles you've already won, how can you truly believe in what you're capable of next? There was a time in your life when you felt invincible. Not because everything was perfect, but because you were connected to something real inside you, something that didn't ask for permission to exist. Maybe you were a child, running without fear, speaking without apology. Or maybe it was a brief, shining moment during hardship, when everything fell apart and something inside you rose up and said, "No, not today." That wasn't ego. That was clarity. That was you. And here's the truth. That spark? It didn't disappear. So where is it now? And more importantly, how do you bring it back to life? And that spark? The one you thought you lost? It didn't burn out. It simply got buried. It's not gone. It's just hidden beneath layers that were never yours to carry. It's been buried under the opinions you never asked for. The criticism you didn't deserve. The moments you failed, and mistakenly decided that failure defined you. It's been weighed down by the fog of life. The noise. The pressure. The expectations of who you should be and how you should act. All of it made it harder to hear yourself. Harder to feel that fire in your chest. But let's be clear about something. You didn't lose your fire. You just stopped feeding it. Because real fire, the kind that lives inside your ribcage, the kind that fights for breath even when everything's pushing against it, it doesn't go out that easily. It doesn't die from one setback. Not even 1,000. It waits. It smolders in the background. It pulls back, not because it's weak, but because it's patient. It's waiting for one thing. A choice. Not a loud, dramatic transformation. Not a perfect morning filled with motivation and clarity. Just a quiet, firm decision to believe again. Not in some fantasy version of who you think you should be, but in the core of who you've always been. The part of you that never left. The part that's been whispering in the background, hoping you'd finally listen. Carl Jung once said, "Your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart." Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakes. That invincibility you once felt, that fire that used to roar even in chaos, that wasn't a dream. That wasn't some naive phase. That was your heart speaking clearly, before the world taught you to doubt it. And maybe now. Now is the time to stop scanning the horizon for permission to believe in yourself again. Maybe it's time to stop waiting for someone to recognize your worth. Maybe it's time to stop looking out there for the validation that's been sitting in here all along. Because the journey back to your fire doesn't begin in the world. It begins with you, so maybe now, it's time to stop looking out there for recognition. And start looking within. You are not starting over. You are returning. You are not broken. You are not lost. You are simply buried, beneath years of stories that were never yours to carry. Stories of who you had to be, who you were told you weren't, and what you should settle for. It's time to let those go. One by one. With grace. With honesty. With peace. Because underneath all of that weight is something real. Something whole. Something that's been patiently waiting for you to come back. That voice? The one inside you that doesn't shout, doesn't beg to be heard. It's still there. And it's whispering something powerful. I'm not done. I'm just remembering. You don't need to raise your voice to know you're right. You don't need to dominate a room to prove your presence. Because here's the truth. The loudest person in the room is rarely the strongest. Volume doesn't equal power. It often masks insecurity. The real kind of strength. It moves in silence. It builds in the background. It doesn't announce itself with drama or spectacle. It doesn't need to be seen, because it's too focused on becoming. That's what real confidence is. It's not flashy. It's not reactive. It's not obsessed with validation. It's quiet, steady, and unmoved by who's watching. True confidence doesn't need an audience. It doesn't need applause. It just needs truth and commitment. And here's the problem. You've been conditioned to believe that if no one sees it, it doesn't count. That if you don't post about it, it didn't happen. That if it isn't praised, it isn't growth. But that's not transformation. That's performance. Confidence is not about proving. It's about knowing. And when you know, truly, deeply know who you are, you don't need the world to clap. You don't need the spotlight. You just keep showing up. Every single day. Even when no one's cheering. Even when no one's looking. Because real growth happens in the quiet. In the discipline. In the moments when no one's watching, but you keep building anyway. So the question becomes, can you stay loyal to yourself, even in silence? So if no one's watching, if it's just you and the work, that's where real power begins to take shape. Because what you do when no one's looking, that's who you really are. Plato once said, "The measure of a man is what he does with power." But I'd take it further. The measure of a person is what they do with power, especially when no one's watching. Because yes, the world will notice. Eventually. It always does. But the first version of you that needs to notice your growth, your discipline, your becoming, is you. So if you're out there building something quietly, and no one's acknowledging it yet, good. Let them miss it. Let them scroll past. Let them overlook your name, your effort, your vision. Let your silence confuse them. Let your consistency disturb them. Because one day, they'll ask, how did you get here? When did you become this version of yourself? But by then, your answer will already be written in your results. Now, how many times have you told yourself, I'll start when I'm ready? Maybe you've never said it out loud, but you've felt it. That whisper in your mind saying, I need more confidence first. I should wait until I'm more experienced. Let me just prepare a little longer. But here's the truth most people never hear. Readiness isn't something you wait for. It's not a magical moment that shows up with perfect timing. It's not a visitor that rings the doorbell and says, now is the time. Readiness is something you build. Not by thinking. Not by waiting. But by doing. You don't become ready and then act. You act, and through that action, you become ready. Look at anyone you admire. Any story that ever moved you. Any name that left a mark on you. None of them began with confidence. None of them started with certainty. They began with fear. With trembling hands and anxious thoughts. But they moved anyway. And in that movement, they became. As Aristotle said, we learn by doing. Not by waiting. Not by overthinking. Not by obsessing over the perfect time. But by walking into the very thing we fear, and growing in the process. And fear? Fear is clever. It rarely shouts. It whispers. It disguises itself as logic. It says, be practical. Wait until the timing's better. You should gather more information. Get more approval. Feel more prepared. It sounds reasonable. It sounds safe, so what if all that logic, all that hesitation, isn't wisdom? What if it's just fear, speaking with a polished accent? What if that hesitation isn't protecting you, but paralyzing you? What if that little voice telling you to wait, to hold off, to be practical, isn't wise, it's just dressed up in cautious clothing? Because here's the truth. Your future self, the one who's more grounded, more capable, more fulfilled. They're not waiting for some perfect moment. They're not sitting around for the stars to align. They're calling you forward. Not from some far-off mountaintop, but from the exact place where you feel most unsure. Right now. Right here. So if you're scared, good. That means you're alive. That means something real is happening. You're brushing up against something meaningful. Important. Discomfort isn't a red flag. It's not a warning to run away. It's a signal. It means you're standing on the edge of growth. Right at the boundary between who you are and who you're about to become. And here's the truth that so many people miss. You don't wait to become worthy of that transformation. You don't wait until you deserve it. You don't wait until the world gives you a certificate of permission. You act your way into it. You move forward in the mess. You make decisions when the outcome isn't clear. You keep going when nothing feels guaranteed. Because worthiness isn't handed to you. It's earned, in the trenches. In the small moments of action. In the quiet decisions no one sees. In the commitment you show when every part of you wants to run. Confidence? That's not something you find first. You don't wake up with it and then show up. You show up first, scared, unready, uncertain. And then, over time, through repetition, through resilience, you become confident. It's built, not found. And every single time you say to yourself, I can't, your body listens. Your nervous system hears it. It doesn't argue. It doesn't fact-check. It just follows the script you feed it. So the question is, what kind of script are you going to hand your future? Every time you whisper to yourself I can't, your mind listens. It doesn't argue. It doesn't fact-check. It simply says, okay, then let's make that true. Your body accepts the command, and starts wiring itself around that limitation. Your shoulders tense. Your breathing shortens. Your energy pulls back. Your thoughts start shrinking to fit the new boundary you just defined. And if you repeat that thought enough times, I'm not good at this. This isn't for me. It's too late. It becomes more than just a belief. It becomes a blueprint. A pattern. A silent rule book that your actions start to follow, without ever questioning it. That's the dangerous part about self-doubt. It doesn't kick in like an alarm. It's not obvious. It's quiet. Subtle. It shows up as a whisper. Maybe I'm just not wired for this. I've never really been good at that. It's probably too late anyway. It sounds like logic. It feels like truth. But it's not. It's fear. Fear in disguise. Fear, dressed up in the clothes of reason. Fear, pretending to protect you while quietly holding you back. And it slips past your defenses because it doesn't scream. It sounds like you. It hides behind casual phrases. It gets in by sounding reasonable. But what if you stopped treating those thoughts as absolute truth? What if you treated them like suggestions, not commands? What if, instead of reacting with panic, you responded with curiosity? Carl Jung once said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Let that sink in. Because most of us, we're being led by thoughts we never actually chose. Beliefs we inherited. Voices we absorbed long before we ever realized we had the right to question them. Thoughts passed down by teachers, parents, society. Subtle opinions that turned into internal narration. They wrote our inner script, before we even knew we were allowed to write our own. So next time that inner voice speaks up and says, you're not enough. Don't absorb it. Stop. Pause. And ask yourself, whose voice is this, really? Is it a younger version of you, tired, scared, speaking from pain? Is it someone else's voice, a coach, a parent, a stranger's passing comment, that somehow planted itself inside you? Because once you identify the source, you weaken its grip. You remember a crucial truth. You are not your thoughts. You are the one observing them. You are the thinker, not the thought. And that means You don't have to control every thought that comes. But you absolutely have the power to decide which ones you give your energy to. So how do you start rewriting that script, and reclaim the voice that actually belongs to you? You don't have to control every thought that enters your mind. But you do get to choose which ones stay. Which ones you build your life around. Which ones get a permanent seat at your table. Your mind is a space, a sacred one. And just like your home, it can collect clutter. Thoughts of self-doubt, fear, shame. They pile up, slowly, silently, until you barely notice the weight. But here's the powerful part. You can clean it. You can sort through what no longer belongs. You can create mental order, not by force, but by intention. By replacing noise with clarity. Assumptions with real questions. Judgment with understanding. Blame with truth. Your power begins the moment you stop being an echo. The moment you stop replaying the same scripts that were handed to you. And instead, start becoming the editor. The author. The one who chooses the script. Not just repeats the one you inherited. That's when everything shifts. But here's where it gets tricky. You're scrolling. You're staring. You're seeing them. The people building, winning, shining in perfectly filtered success. And without even realizing it, you start shrinking. Not on the outside, but inside, where it counts most. You begin comparing their milestones to your mess. Their highlight reels to your behind the scenes. Their victories to your quiet struggles. And suddenly, you feel like you're falling behind. Like you're losing a race you didn't even know you entered. But let's pause right there. Because here's the truth you rarely hear. Comparison is a thief. It doesn't just steal your joy. It takes your focus. Your gratitude. Your confidence. Your peace. It tells you you're late when your journey has its own timeline. It tells you you're behind when in reality, you're just building differently. It makes you question your worth in places where you've already grown so much. And the worst part? It distracts you from your own progress. It pulls your eyes away from your own lane. So how do you reclaim that attention, and redirect it inward where it belongs? Comparison doesn't just steal your focus. It hijacks your momentum, and trades it for anxiety, envy, and a quiet sense that somehow, you're not enough. But the cruelest part? Most of what you're comparing isn't even real. You're measuring your full humanity, your complexity, your messiness, your struggle, against someone else's highlight reel. An edited glimpse. A polished frame. A curated version of reality that was never meant to reflect the whole truth. It's an unfair fight from the beginning. You're not seeing the early mornings they questioned everything. You're not seeing the late nights full of doubt and fear. You're seeing a moment, designed to shine, while ignoring all the chaos that came before it. The Stoics. They saw this with perfect clarity. They believed that the good life wasn't about how much you have, but about how well you live. Epictetus warned us clearly. Never tie your worth to things outside of your control. Especially not other people's achievements. He said. Freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control. But we hand over our inner peace every time we measure our progress against someone else's. We give away our joy. we sabotage our confidence. And worst of all, we lose sight of the beauty in our own journey. But hear this clearly. You are not behind. You are on your path. One with its own rhythm, its own timing, its own challenges and its own gifts. You were never meant to match someone else's timeline. You weren't created to bloom like someone else's flower. Aristotle believed that every person has a unique purpose, what he called telos. And trying to replicate someone else's path is like planting a tree and expecting it to bloom like a rose. It's not wrong. It's just not you. So stop chasing someone else's definition of success. Start asking, am I better than I was yesterday? Did I try, just a little, today? Am I learning, even in the smallest ways? Because that's where the real progress lies. Not in the spotlight. Not in the applause. But in the small, quiet steps of self-awareness. Steps that no one may ever post about, but that shape you more deeply than any viral moment ever could. What you think you need right now. It's not another motivational quote. It's not a pep talk or a new mantra. What you need is memory. A quiet, honest remembering of everything you've already survived. Everything you've pushed through. Everything you've rebuilt, alone, unseen, and uncelebrated, because if you could look back clearly, really look, you'd realize something incredible. You've survived so much more than you give yourself credit for. Small blue diamond emoji, those days that cracked you, but didn't break you? That's your proof. The nights when you lay awake with fear pressing against your chest. And still got up. Still got dressed. Still faced the day when quitting would have been so much easier. That's not just resilience. That's your resume. Not your titles. Not your metrics. Not the external accomplishments you think define your worth. Your proof is in your perseverance. Because resilience isn't some magical trait that only the strong are born with. It's a decision. A quiet choice, made over and over again. It's saying yes to life even when everything in you screams stop. It's standing up when the path ahead is unclear. It's whispering not yet when the world offers you every excuse to give up. Resilience is forged in the fire of fatigue, refined in the pressure of fear, and proven in the presence of failure. Plato once said, "Courage is knowing what not to fear." But maybe real courage is fearing it all, and walking through it anyway. You're stronger than you feel. Not because someone gave you permission. Not because someone handed you a trophy. But because you've practiced strength when no one noticed. The kind of strength that doesn't get posted. The kind that doesn't come with rewards or standing ovations. The kind that's lived in private. Behind closed doors. In hard moments you didn't think you'd survive, but did. That's where real confidence is born. Not in speeches. Not in applause. But in your ability to stand back up, one more time, after life tried to knock you flat. Your confidence isn't something that arrives when things are easy. It's something you earn in the dark. Because the mind, your mind, is both a battlefield and a sanctuary. It can be the place where chaos multiplies, or where clarity takes root. It's not just where your thoughts live. It's where your future is shaped, and now you know, you've always had what it takes. So the next time fear whispers, "You're not ready," you'll have something louder, something stronger, to answer with. I've already been through worse. I'm not starting over. I'm starting stronger. If this message resonated with you, don't keep it to yourself. Like, comment, share, or simply sit with it. Let it echo inside. Let it remind you of who you've always been. Because your story, it's not over. It's just getting started. Your mind, it's where your future is built. Brick by brick. Decision by decision. Thought by thought. And more often than not, it's not the actual problems in your life that undo you. It's not the challenge itself. It's the interpretation of that challenge. The story your mind spins around it. The quiet assumptions. The whispered fears. That subtle voice that says, "This always happens to me. I'm not ready. They're better than me." That's where the spiral begins. Because the truth is, it's not the event. It's the explanation. Socrates once said, "The unexamined life is not worth living." But let's take that further. What about the unexamined thought? Those sentences you say to yourself over and over again. So often, you don't even realize they're there. They slip in quietly, like background noise. I'm just not the type of person who can do that. I always mess things up. This never works out for me. Not because they're true, but because they're familiar. Because you've carried them for so long. You started believing they belonged to you. But they don't. You can reclaim the gate. You can stop letting every thought walk in like it owns the place. You can become the gatekeeper of your own mind. The one who pauses and says, "Wait, where did that belief come from?" It starts, not in noise, but in stillness. Not silence, necessarily, but awareness. That sacred space between stimulus and response. Between the thought, and the choice to believe it. Start auditing your beliefs. Not to judge them, but to understand them. Where did this belief begin? Who gave it to you? Does it reflect truth? Or just old programming? Because here's something Carl Jung warned us about. People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls. But facing your mind? That's the beginning of freedom. It's not a glamorous process. It doesn't come with filters or followers. But it's a liberating one. And you don't need to wait another day to begin. Start cleaning your mental language. Speak to yourself with the same care you'd give someone you love. Journal, not to perform, but to see. To get honest. To stop writing what you hope is true. And start writing what is. So you can move toward what can be. Don't just feed your mind with content. Train it with intention. Practice thinking like it's a skill, because it is. This isn't about being perfect. It's about being aware. Being conscious. Being present enough to stop echoing the past. And start editing the future. Because your life will follow the story you tell yourself. And you are the author now. Let me know if you'd like me to compile the full script into a polished YouTube script document, with formatting ready for teleprompter or video recording. I can also create caption text, video title, description, and tag suggestions optimized for search. So how do you begin? Practice noticing. Practice replacing. Because a trained mind, it doesn't panic when problems arise. It pauses. It takes a breath. It doesn't react to every opinion thrown its way. It filters. It doesn't chase control in chaos. It seeks clarity. A trained mind isn't about being perfect. It's about being present. It won't save you from every obstacle in life. But it will protect you from the worst enemy of all. The ones you invent in your own mind. So many of us have tied our self-worth to outcomes. To the job offer. To the number in the bank account. To the applause from a crowd we don't even know. We look to results like they're mirrors, hoping they'll reflect something back. That we're finally enough. That we're valuable. That we matter. And when those results don't show what we hoped for, we start shrinking. Silently. Believing maybe we're the failure. Maybe we're not good enough after all. But here's the truth you've been needing to hear. Outcomes are liars. They don't tell the full story. They don't know your effort. They don't account for your growth. They don't measure the inner battles you've fought just to show up. They're shaped by timing. By chance. By things completely outside your control. And if you build your worth on that shaky ground, then every high will never feel high enough. And every failure, it will feel like a verdict. You'll end up stuck. Running in circles. Chasing worth from things that were never meant to define you. The Stoics understood this deeply. Long before social media. Before algorithms. Before awards and follower counts. Marcus Aurelius, a Roman emperor who could have chased titles and praise, didn't measure his life by what people said about him. He measured it by how he lived it. And that's the shift waiting for you too. Not in some future version of yourself, but right now. In this very moment. Because maybe, it's not about changing everything. It's about changing how you see everything. Marcus Aurelius didn't measure his life by the number of victories he earned in battle, or the applause that echoed from the Roman Senate. He didn't tally his worth in titles or tributes. Instead, he looked inward. He measured his success by something deeper, more enduring. Did he live in alignment with virtue? Did his choices flow from integrity rather than impulse? From wisdom instead of ego? That was his compass. That was his true north. The Stoics believed power was never really in the outcome. It lived in the process. In how you choose to move through the world. Not what the world gives back to you. Epictetus said it best. Do not seek for things to happen the way you want them to. Rather, wish that what happens, happens the way it happens. Then you will be happy. At first glance, that might sound like giving up. Like passivity. But look closer. That's not passivity. That's peace. That's the kind of peace that's earned through surrendering the illusion of control and grounding yourself in the only thing you truly own. Your response. You are not your wins. You are not your losses. You are who you are in the face of both. You are not the applause. You are the effort behind the curtain. The decision to show up when no one's clapping. The intention to move forward when no one's watching. That's who you are. Detachment is one of the most misunderstood ideas. People hear the word and think, oh, so you don't care. But that's not it. True detachment doesn't mean you're indifferent. It means you care deeply. But you don't collapse when things don't unfold the way you hoped. It means you give your best. You pour yourself into the work. You love fully. Fight bravely. Dream boldly. But you don't let the result define your worth. That's not apathy. That's mastery. You can love something and still be able to let go of the outcome. You can give it everything and still stand tall if it doesn't land the way you imagined. That kind of strength, it isn't shaken by wins or losses, because it's not floating on external validation. It's anchored deep in inner stability. And in a world that constantly shifts, isn't that the kind of strength worth building? Because the next part we're about to explore is where that strength becomes unshakable. Not in theory, but in action. Let's keep going. You don't need to leap. You don't need to jump headfirst into the unknown. That's the myth. That transformation arrives in one sweeping, cinematic moment. The kind you see in movies, where everything changes, the music swells, and suddenly, you're new. But real life, it doesn't play by Hollywood's script. Growth isn't a lightning strike. It's not one grand act of courage. It's a series of small, quiet, honest ones. Steps, not jumps. Whispers, not roars. You don't have to see the whole path ahead. You just need to take the next step. The one right in front of you. The one that feels uncomfortable but real. The one that challenges you. Not to be perfect, but to be present. To be you, just a little more bravely than yesterday. True courage? It doesn't always look like heroism. It's not always a bold confrontation or a headline moment. Sometimes courage looks like saying no when your whole nervous system wants to say yes, just to avoid rejection. Sometimes it's writing one honest sentence when the voice in your head screams delete it, no one cares. Sometimes it's just getting out of bed, putting your feet on the floor, facing a day that feels like a mountain, when all you want to do is disappear beneath the covers. Plato once said, "The first and greatest victory is to conquer yourself." But that kind of victory? It doesn't come with a medal. It doesn't arrive overnight. It comes through repetition. Through showing up again and again. In small, unseen ways. And choosing what's true. Even when fear is louder than hope. You don't build a new identity with one powerful gesture. You build it moment by moment. By showing up as someone just slightly more aligned, slightly more courageous than the version you were the day before. And something beautiful begins to happen. Your inner narrative shifts. You stop seeing yourself as the one who doubts, and start seeing yourself as the one who moves anyway. Not because you're fearless, but because you're faithful. Faithful to your growth. Faithful to your truth. Faithful to your future. And that shift, that subtle, quiet, undeniable change in how you view yourself, is the spark of everything. Because identity shapes action. and action reinforces identity. It becomes a loop, a pattern. And the beautiful part? You control it. So let me ask you this. Who are you when no one's watching? When there's no validation? No camera? No applause waiting on the other side? Just you. Your choices. And the silence, that's where it happens. In the quiet. In the stillness that surrounds those unnoticed moments. That's where real self-respect is born. Not under spotlights. Not with applause echoing in your ears. But in the unseen hours. In the pauses between decisions. In the choices no one else will ever witness. Because character is never built in performance. It's built in presence. Moment by moment. Step by step. With quiet, unwavering integrity. It's easy to look strong when people are watching. It's easy to say the right words when the room is clapping. But the real transformation? That happens when you do the right thing. Not because anyone might see. But because you see. Because you know. And that knowing becomes your compass. Your internal true north. Your anchor in the storm. Socrates once said, "The soul is dyed the color of its thoughts." But it's more than just thoughts. It's also dyed by your habits. By your actions. By the invisible rituals you repeat when no one is around. That's what shapes your soul's hue. That's what paints the inside of your life. You don't build self-trust by saying the right things. You build it by showing up. Again and again. When it's cold. When it's hard. When there's nothing to gain but your own respect. And let me tell you something. That kind of consistency, that kind of quiet loyalty to the promises you make to yourself behind closed doors, that's where unshakable self-respect is formed. Not in noise. Not in praise. But in repetition. In alignment. In choosing to be honest when no one is holding you accountable. Except you. That's how you build the kind of confidence that doesn't crack under pressure. The kind that doesn't scream for validation. Because it doesn't need it. So, if you're wondering where to begin, if you're searching for the first step to reclaim your strength, you don't have to go far. You don't need a stage. You just need a moment. A quiet one. Where you choose what's right over what's easy. And in that moment, you'll begin to build something stronger than success. Integrity, self-respect is born the moment you learn to show up without needing a witness. When you stop asking for permission to be powerful. When your strength stops being something you broadcast for validation, and starts becoming something you carry quietly inside. That's the shift. That's the breakthrough. You stop performing. You stop chasing approval. You stop bending yourself into smaller shapes just to fit someone else's expectations. You simply are. No need to explain. No need to impress. Just steady, centered, grounded. And when you live like that, even the loudest criticism starts to sound like background noise. Irrelevant, fleeting, powerless against the fire inside you. So stop shrinking. Stop hiding your edges. Stop tucking parts of yourself away. just to make others feel less uncomfortable. Stop apologizing for your ambition, for your hunger, for your truth. You're not too much. You're exactly enough for the purpose you were built for. Ambition isn't arrogance. It's clarity. It's not about thinking you're better. It's about knowing you were built for something bigger. But somewhere along the road, you were taught to tone it down. That striving made you selfish. That confidence made you dangerous. That power made you problematic. That was never about you. That was about their discomfort. You became a mirror, reflecting what others didn't want to confront in themselves. But real humility? It doesn't ask you to disappear. It asks you to be rooted. It's not about silence. It's about stillness in your center. It's not about hiding your gifts. It's about offering them with grace, with dignity, with strength. Socrates said, "To find yourself, think for yourself. And when you do, you'll realize something powerful." Humility is not shrinking. It's stepping forward without demanding attention. It's standing tall without needing to be loud. Because courage doesn't always come with a megaphone. It often walks in silence. It moves with presence. It acts with purpose. Even when it's unpopular. Even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. You don't have to draw attention to yourself. But you do have to stop pretending. Your voice doesn't matter. You do have to stop acting like your presence is a burden. You weren't made to disappear. You weren't made to fade into the background of someone else's story. You were made to contribute, to create, to speak, to show what it looks like, to live with quiet, unshakable integrity in a world that constantly demands noise. And no, that doesn't mean being aggressive. It doesn't mean being showy. It means being real. Being intentional. Being aligned. Living with dignity. Speaking when it matters. Standing tall. Not for attention, but for truth. You don't need to be praised to be powerful. You don't need a standing ovation to matter. You don't need applause to prove your worth. Real significance doesn't shout. It shows up. Every single day. Quietly, faithfully. For the people you love. For the goals that whisper instead of roar. For the work that may never trend, but transforms you anyway. Your worth? It isn't measured by how many eyes are on you. It's measured by how present you are when no one is watching. Fear has never been the true enemy. It gets blamed. But fear is just a messenger. What really holds you back is how tightly you grip it. How quickly you believe it. How rarely you question it. How silently you let it shape your life. Without ever asking, where are you taking me? Fear gains power in your silence. It multiplies in avoidance. It thrives in those dark corners where you've stopped looking. It grows in the stories you never challenge. The ones that sound like, I can't do this. It's too late for me. What if I fail again? So challenge it. Sit with it. Talk to it. Get specific. Ask yourself, what am I really afraid of? Not in a vague, foggy way, but directly. Is it failure? Is it being misunderstood? Is it starting over and having to admit that maybe, just maybe, the last chapter wasn't the right one? More often than not, the thing you fear most isn't a threat to your life. It's a threat to your ego. It's discomfort. It's uncertainty. It's the risk of being seen in a way you can't control. But guess what? That's exactly where growth lives. Carl Jung said, where your fear is, there is your task. Fear isn't a stop sign. It's a spotlight. It shines directly on the parts of you that are still ruled by limitation instead of freedom. So if something both scares you and excites you, pay attention. That's your next chapter calling. That's the edge of your becoming. And if you're not at that edge, every now and then, if everything feels safe, familiar, predictable, then maybe you're not growing. Maybe you've mistaken comfort for peace. And the difference? Peace is earned through alignment. Comfort is often a disguise. For stagnation, growth doesn't happen in the absence of fear. It happens in the presence of fear. When you choose to move anyway. So stop waiting to feel fearless. Stop waiting for the voice of fear to disappear. It won't. But you can turn down its volume. You don't need fear to vanish. You just need courage to speak louder. Even if only in a whisper that says, I'm scared, but I'm still going. That day you're waiting for? The day you finally wake up without fear? It doesn't exist. That day doesn't come. And maybe that's not the curse it sounds like. Maybe it's the invitation. Because what if the goal wasn't to erase fear, but to learn how to walk beside it? Not behind it. Not under it. Not ruled by it. But shoulder to shoulder. Let fear walk with you. As a companion, not a commander. Let it be a signal, not a sentence. A teacher, not a trap. Discipline gets misunderstood. People think it's punishment. They think it means restriction. No freedom, no joy, just constant pressure. But real discipline? It's none of that. It's not the enemy of freedom. It is freedom. It's the quiet power of structure. It's the foundation you build. So that when everything around you gets loud, messy, or uncertain, you remain steady. It's the feeling of being able to say, I've got me, I can count on myself. When your world feels out of control, discipline is the drumbeat you come back to. It's the rhythm that reminds your nervous system. We've been here before. We've handled chaos. We're not strangers to storms. That kind of internal trust, that's peace. That's stability. That's strength. Motivation? It's nice. But it's a visitor. It comes when the mood is right. When the stars align. When the weather of your mind is clear. But discipline stays. When motivation disappears. Discipline is the hand that lifts you up. When inspiration has left the room, it's the voice that whispers. It doesn't matter how you feel right now. It matters what you've promised yourself. Your worth isn't tied to whether you feel excited today. It's built, brick by brick, on the choices you've made. Again and again and again. As Aristotle said, we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit. So make your routine sacred. Not rigid. Not obsessive. Not perfect. Sacred. Let them be your anchor. Your quiet rituals that speak even when your voice shakes. Because on the days when doubt creeps in, when everything feels foggy, when you forget who you are, those routines, they will speak for you. They'll remind you, I know who I am, because I show up for myself. Even when no one else sees it. Even when no one else claps. That's the real reward. Not recognition, but the quiet pride of being someone who doesn't wait to feel ready, who doesn't wait to be fearless, but shows up anyway, and that, more than any external reward, more than any medal, more than any like or applause. That is what discipline really is. A daily act of self-respect. It's not about being rigid. It's not about being hard on yourself. It's not about suffering. It's about honoring who you're becoming. Even when no one else sees it. You've waited long enough. You've been holding out for the right mood. The perfect wave of energy. The golden window of time. When everything just feels aligned. You've been silently hoping for some external signal. A green light. A voice. A permission slip that says, now you can begin. But readiness? It's not a gift that gets handed to you. It's not a lightning strike. It's not a mystical moment that whispers, you're finally worthy. Readiness is something you create. You create it by stepping forward. Even when your legs are trembling. Even when your heart is uncertain. Even when the old story tells you to wait. Because here's the truth. You're already becoming. Not in some grand, cinematic moment. Not in a dramatic, public unveiling. But quietly. Daily. In the in-between spaces. In the small, sacred choices that no one claps for. You're growing. In the moments where you choose integrity over ease. Where you choose patience over the urge to react. Where you choose effort over excuses. You're growing. In those early mornings you get up despite the fog. In the conversations where you listen instead of lash out. In the promises you keep to yourself. When nobody else would even know if you broke them. Those moments? They don't go viral. They don't trend. They don't come with trophies. But they're shaping you. They're laying the foundation. Brick by honest brick. For someone deeply grounded. That version of you. The one you admire. The one who walks with quiet confidence. Who speaks with clarity. Who lives with steady strength. That version isn't a fantasy. They're not waiting at some finish line. 1,000 miles away. They're already within you. Waiting. not to be found, but to be uncovered. Carl Jung once wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Not to perform. Not to conform. Not to meet every expectation thrown your way. But to become you. In the most honest, unapologetic, grace-filled way possible." And the wild part is, you don't need to become someone else. You just need to stop running from the person you already are. You need to stop running from who you already are. Not the polished version. Not the version you think will finally be enough. Once the job, the body, the approval arrive. No. The version of you that exists when no one's watching. When you're at your most honest. When you're tired of pretending. And finally ready to tell yourself the truth. That version of you? They're not far. They're close. So close. Closer than you think. They're not waiting years ahead. They're not hiding at the end of some giant transformation. They're one aligned choice away. One moment of courage. One step in the direction you keep delaying. You don't need to overhaul everything. You don't need to wait for the fear to vanish. You just need to say, today, I'll choose truth over comfort. And when you do, when you stop underestimating that quiet truth, already blooming inside of you, everything shifts. Not because the world suddenly gets easier. Not because the noise goes away. But because you do. You stop waiting for permission. You stop outsourcing your power. You stop shrinking your light to fit into places you've outgrown. You start walking with quiet purpose. You begin acting like the person you've always been capable of becoming. And once you do that, there's no going back. Not because you're perfect, but because you've tasted alignment. You've felt the strength that only comes from being deeply, unapologetically you. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are becoming. Right now. In every unnoticed moment. In every quiet decision. You're becoming in ways the world may never see. But your future self will thank you for. So keep going. Even when no one claps. Even when no one understands. Even when doubt walks beside you. Because the strength you're building now, the quiet, sturdy, self-respecting kind, will one day speak louder than anything you've ever said. If this spoke to something real inside you, there's another video on the screen right now that'll take you even deeper. Let it be your next step. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being a part of Stoic Journal. This space isn't about perfection. It's about progress, purpose, and the kind of quiet power that changes everything from the inside out. And now that you've come this far, pause for just a moment. Not to escape the world, but to finally meet the one person you've always been running from, yourself. You're not just your habits. You're not just your history. You are the author of your own story. And today is a blank page. The Stoics didn't ask us to be perfect. They asked us to be aware. To know where we stand. To know why we do what we do. And to have the courage to face it without fear. So ask yourself, not who you've been, but who you're becoming. And remember, you don't need to shout to prove your worth. You just need to know it, deep within. Right pointing finger emoji, if this journey sparked something inside you. Don't forget to subscribe and stay. Because this isn't just a video. It's a beginning. A return to yourself.